All right, welcome back. We got a great podcast today. We have Principal Mr. Wisniewski here with us today. We're gonna talk what it's going like. Well, he was the coach at played at Montclair State, coach at Montclair State.
Captain.
Coached at Duma. Well, I'll let you interject those things along the way.
I gotta give this cross. The poor guy. Listen, Dave, you guys share a very similar background. The guy was a fullback. Like, feel bad for him. You know what I mean? Like,
got no love touching the ball.
Yeah, and you were a fullback 10 years after me, when at least we still were involved in the offense back then. But eventually,
now they're not even on rosters.
I was a guard with a cool number.
The better way to put it. 100%, dude.
Yeah, that's pretty funny, actually. That's right. Yeah, I remember thinking, like, oh yeah, you can play fullback, you're gonna carry the ball. You know, it was like 5 carries a game. You know, I was like, well, bang into guys.
Dave was like a track sprints, like, you know what I mean? Like, he was a sprinter in track in high school, and like, and then moved them. It's funny, dude. It's a funny.
Like 2 passes.
Then he had to move to linebacker, dude. Like, I mean,
linebacker was great. So I moved over there. I didn't know I'd be thrilled, but I was thrilled. Because you're involved in the action all the time, you know what I mean? Yep. And you didn't have to, you were killing them versus you trying to dig out a 270-pound DN when you weigh 225, you know? It's
all about angles.
It's all well, back then, though, see, when you were in fullback, it was about angles. It had moved to that direction. When I was first fullback, the first 2 years at UConn, before Coach Schultz came in, and then changed the offense, I really wasn't a fit and moved over to linebacker, and that was where I started the rest of the career there. When I was starting fullback originally, there was no such thing as like angle. Like, you had to dig that. You had to take the angle, but you had to dig the
like through that guy's throat.
Was like, you couldn't position. Like, you had to dig these guys out. So the worst play of all was when we would run our blast. We ran it like 2 ways. We ran it where, you know, the tackle would block out, and you know, traditional, like. But then we also ran down block, like a power down block with a wrap, and then my job was to kick out the defensive end. And I tell this story all the time. We were playing JMU, we beat them, but they had a defensive end that was like an all world, all conference or all American defensive end. And I was like, I'm just gonna try and kill this guy. So I went to go to dig him out, and I went full speed, and I was like, I killed him. And I looked up. I was 1 yard from the quarterback. He had pushed me back like 2 yards. I tried to kick him out. I was like, oh my God, this 270-pound DN was unmovable.
That was our whole offense at Montclair, was down, kick out, and we were the kick out. Guard pulls through. So it was just finding that angle and using the fact that I'm 5'8", and a lot of these guys are 6'2", 6'3". Just play the odds.
Yeah, that's it. You got lucky. It worked out more in your favor than it did, Coach. But that's part of it.
And Eugene Vick was the benefactor of a lot of those dig outs. And
oh my God, it was fun though. It was fun. Then, you know, then they throw you passing the flat every once in a while. You're like, oh, you know.
Or at least they'll send you out in the route to make it.
Send me out in the route.
You got a shot.
Yeah.
And my big run play was, I don't know if you ran this at Montclair. My big run play was the trap. That was what we ran. The fullback ran. No, you guys didn't run that. We ran.
Listen, we were fortunate too. Like, my senior year, we ended up, like, my last 2 years there, we had one hell of a fullback who was like a 5th-year guy in Vinny Verkatapane, whose younger brother Nick played at Western Michigan as a DN, but this guy was a fullback. Dude, he was like a 5th-year guy at Montclair State, like, came back, like, I don't know, don't ask me why, like, just to play fullback. Like, literally that's all he did. And, you know, like, you're talking about the ugliest dresser, no gloves, no nothing, wore number 45, just like did all the dirty work. And like, as a 5th year in a D3 program, and he was a dog. Like, it was, and he mattered. He factored into it because we had a couple of backs that were pretty damn good. only because of him. You know what I mean? So it's weird to see how offenses have kind of, gone away from it. I think you're starting to see a little bit of it coming back. Now it's not the fullback, but like, you're a D lineman and like, hey, you go on the other side or, something of that nature. They kind of just add that factor in, but there ain't nobody with a fullback on the roster.
No, and it's more of that H-back where you get a guy like Kyle Juszczyk on the 49ers.
Yep, he's kind of changed the mold
he can get in there, but he can get out, run routes. Or you get to look at the guy like Ricard on the Ravens.
Yeah.
A converted D lineman that's just a monster. It's all about your offense and what you want to do behind it.
Yep, 100%.
No doubt. Coach, when you moved from coaching to administrator, what was that like for you?
It was interesting. It was one of those circumstances. I had I was 30 years old. We just had my daughter, 6 months old at the time. Opportunity came up, and at the school I was teaching in, Dumont High School, and it was hard. I will say that was one of the hardest decisions I made. I really enjoyed coaching. I really enjoyed that environment. I like teaching, coaching, all of that. And when you looked at it, the opportunity to help your family, but also have a greater impact in the school, I thought it was just at that time just too great to pass up. And looking back, hindsight, it was a great opportunity, and it still has. And I'm fortunate that I had that opportunity at Dumont, where I was teaching, and then being able to move over to Wayne Valley for a couple of years, and now here at Palm Lakes as the principal.
Principal is quite a task in a sense that you've got to manage the whole entire school and everybody pulling you in 9,000 different directions. What from football, and in the old days, all the administrators used to come, like when I was coming through high school.
Yeah, they were all coaches.
They were all coaches. It didn't mean they were necessarily football coaches, but they were all coaches who came through and became some level of administrator. What is about football and sports that really, helped you to really kind of transition into a principal?
Well, I would even think, going back to the interviews, one of those always problems is like you're interviewing for these positions, whether it's a head coach, principal, assistant principal. There's always that idea that like you don't have experience. So for me, going into that assistant principal interview, I had the experience of coaching. You have the experience of delegating tasks, staff, working with the community, working with parent associations. So the idea that you can show your leadership in coaching is where that transition comes into administration, because if you can lead, and that's really it, whether you're coaching or you're a principal, assistant principal, you're a leader in your school, and you're a leader for the kids, and you always want to make that positive impact. So when you're looking at it, that's that transition. It's similar in the way that people look to you in certain situations, and being a head coach, for that first time, you realize, the buck stops with you really in that program. And as a principal, it really was that same sort of feeling. Moving from assistant principal to principal was like, all right, now you are making that final decision. You are making that choice to go in one direction or the other. As a head coach, you're never going to make everybody happy. You're never going to make happy or the parents happy. You just try to do what you think is best and trust your judgment, trust the people around you. And as a principal, you're trying to do the same thing. I recognize not everybody's going to appreciate every choice I make, every decision I make, whether that's parents or kids or the teachers, right? But at the end of the day, I just want them to trust I'm doing what I believe is in the best interest of our school and of our community as a whole. And everybody's perspective on that's a little different, where my view is got to be more holistic in the way that it impacts as many people positively as I can.
When you're leading as a principal and you got all the different parties pulling at you in all the different directions, like what's kind of your overall philosophy from a leadership standpoint? Because you have the different departments, English department, to the athletic department, to the staff who's working in the school, to the cafeteria, to all the different things that are going on within the school in the day. What kind of is your approach to leadership with all the different groups that you work with?
I think for me, I recognize everybody has their role, and my role is different and unique than everybody else's. But I can't be successful unless the teachers are successful. And the teachers individually need all different things to be successful. But we also need our administrative staff to be successful. We need our coaches to need to be supported so they could be successful. And if our teachers find success, that trickles down to our students. So my approach always is, I'm just a piece to this greater wheel that is going. And for us to move on a steady, smooth path forward, we all have our roles and we all have our responsibilities. But when you go ahead and sit and talk with the people, you have to hear them from their perspective. You have to see where they're coming from, and you have to have those honest conversations with everybody. Sometimes they're not easy. Sometimes you got to hear things as a leader that you don't necessarily want to hear or don't want to acknowledge. But I think as you go ahead with leadership and you go ahead with pushing something forward, you got to be willing to put yourself out there and hear the feedback, and then not only hear it, but put it into play. People aren't going to come to you with things if you just tell them no all the time or ignore them. You could have every committee in the world, but if you're just going to run that committee as you see fit, and you're going to just make your choice at the end of the day that you do anyway, without taking any of their input in, then what's the point? What's the point to that? Now they're not invested. Now they're not falling behind it. So there is certainly times that there's that spectrum of decision making, where there's times where I just have to make a decision, but I still want their input. I still want their background. And even if I'm going to go differently than what some of the teachers are, I want to give them that opportunity. I want to have that opportunity to explain why I'm going in the direction I'm going and where the choice and where the decision making is coming from.
Because do you think that because you kind of came up through the ranks, right? Like you taught for a long time and then you were you had some other administrative roles. Do you think that puts you in a different position, when it comes to that, because you can put yourself in a teacher role or, in that other administrator role when now ultimately you do have to make that decision? Like you said, like you've been in those other spots. Do you think that's benefited you to where you are now? In terms of kind of looking at that and then talking about that feedback and whatnot?
I definitely think it is. And that goes, when you think about that's just leadership in general. Right. I think if you walk into a room thinking you have all the answers, then you're never going to be a leader in that room. Like you have to walk into that knowing that you can learn from other people, and other people, not necessarily just those people, but from past experiences. So I was fortunate to have taught, in one school in Dumont, which has its lore, and then going to Wayne, which is a much bigger school, much different environment. Now you're taking the big school, small school, but through that time, I've connected with school leaders, across the state to learn about different things, learn about how they approach certain situations, what ideas they have regarding mental health or the mental well-being of your students, or thinking of something like a block schedule. If we're going to switch our schedule,
that's awesome.
What are schools that are doing it? What are they doing well? With those people. So it's not just me saying this is my idea. Well, this is an